examples of this in everyday life. Oh, I need to be pretty to be happy. I need surgery to be pretty. I need to be thin, famous, fashionable. Our young men today are being told that women are whores, bitches, things to be screwed, beaten, shit on, and shamed. This is a marketing holocaust. 24 hours a day, for the rest of our lives, the powers that be are hard at work, dumbing us to death. So, to defend ourselves and fight against assimilating this dullness into our thought processes, we must learn to read, to stimulate our own imaginations, to cultivate our own consciousness, our own belief systems. We all need these skills to defend, to preserve our own minds.
Grazie e benvenuti a questo ciclo di conversazioni che ho il piacere di inaugurare. Io sono Alessia Cappuccelli, ex studentessa del corso di scrittura creativa ed ex tesista della professoressa Coppola, ideatrice di questo progetto. Un anno fa ho scritto un romanzo, oggi studio e lavoro come copywriter e la scrittura insieme all'arte è una delle mie due grandi passioni. Prima di introdurre le due protagoniste della serata, lasciate che faccia un breve excursus sul titolo di questo progetto internazionale. Un titolo che, dal primo momento, mi è parso perfettamente calzante con il concetto di scrittura creativa, che in questa sede cercheremo di approfondire e analizzare. Leap before you look, salta prima di guardare. Questo non è un titolo creato appositamente per la serata, ma piuttosto il motto di uno dei college statunitensi più all'avanguardia degli anni 40 e 50 del secolo scorso, il Black Mountain College, un istituto di ricerca che magari qualche mio collega dell'Accademia di Belle Arti ricorderà essere stato la culla del primo grande movimento artistico internazionale, Fluxus, che racchiudeva tra le sue fila artisti e performers provenienti da tutto il mondo, tra i quali Yoko Ono, John Cage e molti altri. Ed è qui che ci ricongiungiamo al tema della serata. Leap before you look è il motto che Carol Becker, la nostra ospite che oggi è collegata in diretta dagli Stati Uniti, ci ha suggerito di utilizzare come titolo per questo ciclo di conversazioni dedicate alla scrittura narrativa. Salta prima di guardare è un invito a lasciarsi andare, a perdere il controllo, a permettere all'ispirazione di travolgerci e stravolgerci. E credo che tutti gli scrittori, artisti o inventori di ogni tempo abbiano sperimentato almeno una volta questa sensazione di vertigine inebriante, che oggi Carol Becker in parte avrà modo di descriverci. Permettetemi dunque di introdurvi le due protagoniste della serata. Come prima, Carol Becker, scrittrice e docente alla Columbia University Schools of the Arts, nota per alcuni saggi davvero ispiranti, come Losing Helen del 2016, nel quale la scrittrice racconta il difficile percorso di una giovane donna che improvvisamente perde sua madre, Helen, o Thinking in Place, un viaggio che potremmo definire meditativo sull'importanza del luogo nella creazione artistica. O ancora The Invisible Drama, Woman in the Anxiety of Change, un'intensa e suggestiva analisi della psiche femminile. E Argia Coppola, drammaturga, scrittrice, docente e ideatrice del progetto Salta Prima di Guardare. In queste 4 conversazioni sarà lei a guidarci alla scoperta di 5 personaggi creativi, italiani e statunitensi, che utilizzano quotidianamente la scrittura nella loro professione, anche se in modi molto diversi tra loro. Carol Becker ha fatto della letteratura il suo pane quotidiano, la ragione per la quale svegliarsi la mattina e iniziare a vivere. Ed è proprio da lei, questa sera, che comincia il nostro percorso alla scoperta della scrittura creativa e di tutti i suoi segreti, che sicuramente i nostri ospiti sapranno svelarci e illustrarci. Breve comunicazione di servizio. Al termine della conversazione avrete 15 minuti a disposizione per fare domande al nostro ospite e ricevere risposta. Segnatele su un taccuino, su un fazzoletto di carta, sulla mano o sul cappotto della persona che avete seduta di fronte a voi. Basta che ve le ricordiate e le poniate quando sarà ora. Grazie e buon ascolto.
La vedo. Ah, eccoti. Ciao, hello. How are you?
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Fine. I wish I were there. Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. Bravo.
We are ready. I would like you will be here, but we have some audience. I would like you feel the vibes, but it's good. So I want to start again with the title because I think it's, you inspire me the title. That has to be the title only of the conversation, but then I decide to use it for all the conversation. So I know that you didn't attend the Black Mountain College, but I remember that when we start to talk about the relationship between creative writing, creativity, and spirituality, you mentioned this motto. So can you tell us what is for you? And although you didn't attend the college, how affect your journey as a writer?
Well, also thank you for the wonderful introduction, which talked about Black Mountain College. I don't speak Italian, but I do speak Spanish, so I could understand. So Black Mountain College is really a historic model for many art schools in America. They were so daring. I mean, 1933 to 1957. So between the war, you also had the benefit of amazing people who were fleeing the Nazis, coming from the Bauhaus, coming from Germany to America, Joseph Albers and Annie Albers and others, to work in a really creative, really innovative academic context. And it was an art school run by artists and lasted for 24 years. But you had, and the person who introduced us mentioned, you had amazing people that were young artists. They weren't famous yet. So you had Robert Rauschenberg, and John Cage and Merce Cunningham and Cy Twombly and Walter Gropius. I mean, you had these amazing people, Ruth Asawa, who hadn't yet become the names that we know now, but were just beginning. And you had an environment that was based on the notion that everything, all education, should be taught with art at its center. So it made art and culture the most important element of pedagogy. And that really came from John Dewey and his writings. But it started in North Carolina. They had a lot of land. They also had gardens and they raised food and they built buildings. And it was all about materiality and creating. And the leap before you look, in English.
What's the meaning for, I don't know how they create this, and maybe with the years, I think for each person, this motto has a different meaning. They ask me what mean for me, what mean for you. But I think it's interesting to understand how they created the beginning and how this motto can have a different meaning when you bring to your work, and also from 1957 to today.
If I talk from 1957 to today, we'll be talking for 5 hours. But
Yeah,
I will.
no, it's true, it's true. Okay, you tell me what is for
I'll
you,
answer.
and I tell you what mean for, because and in the interview they ask me, the people from Turin, a newspaper, they immediately ask about the title. So I think I say what mean for me, but I'm not sure is the original. So maybe you can tell me before what.
I will tell you what it means for me. And I don't know the equivalent phrase in Italian, but in English, you always say, look before you leap.
Okay, yes.
Meaning, don't just jump into something, know where you're going to land.
Caution. You have to be
It's
caution.
caution, and also if you're going to be up in the sky, you want to know where you're coming down. But if you're a creative person, if you're an artist or anybody working in any creative field, and that is very big, then maybe you don't want to know where you're going to land, because maybe if you know where you're going to land, then you don't actually take a chance. So it's really about risk. It's about saying, I don't really know where this is going to go, but I want to do it. I want to create it, whether it's a book or a play or a film or a new app, whatever it is. But I'm going to take a chance, and I will find out where I'm going to land once I'm in the air. And I think for me, it really is aspirational. I don't know that I've ever achieved it, but I often start things, I have no idea where they're going to go, and I'm working in forms I've never worked in before in writing, and I'm not sure, but it's exactly that not being sure that makes something interesting happen.
Yeah, about the take the risk, I'm totally agree. And I realize that you take a risk in writing that is, your job or what you want to do when I speak with students. But I realized that then this idea of the leap, of the risk, influence, expand on all your life, or other things of your life, not only the writing. And so it's a vice versa relationship between a creativity, artist, human, in this case also women. So I say that it's not only about the creativity, the work, but expand also outside. And also for me, I felt a sort of excitement, the verticality, because it's true, you don't know where you land, but there is this, I feel that you have to stay vertical. And so I think, I don't know, I think an excitement, when I think about this title, I think about verticality, so there is also some scaring thing, as the thing I'm doing today, that is kind of scaring, because we talk, we know what we want to go, but we don't know everything. So excitement and face also the fears. And I say this because in your work, okay, it's very complicated for me to define your style, fiction, non-fiction, essay. I find in the style, in the form, this this mingle of already this idea to take the risk that you don't know before the form of the writing. Often students at the beginning ask you, which is the form? It's a poem. It's a short story. It's a novel. And me, still with myself, sometimes you block, you stop, you say, "Oh, I don't have the form." And I noticed that you break the cliché in this. I would like that you start to maybe say us how you do it, what type of process is yours. Maybe in relationship with some book, tonight we will move around the invisible drama that you wrote about women anxiety and the more recent Losing Ellen. So.
Well, okay.
Yeah, it was a long question, I'm sorry.
No, but I know where you're going. I understand. I mean, the problem that people have, I think, is that, well, one, you have to be prepared for failure always. And that's where the risk comes in. If you're not willing to take the possibility that you might fail and that it might not work, then you're probably not pushing very hard on yourself. But I would say the poet Charles Olson said that form is never more than an extension of content. So when I wanted to write about my mother's death, I really thought at first I would write a philosophical book or an analytical book about death in multiple cultures. It never occurred to me that it would be so personal. I didn't intend that book. But when I started writing, that's the book that wanted to be written. So the idea generated its own form. I didn't go into it with a preconceived form. It chose its form. And if you are attuned to yourself in that way, or try to be, then you have to go with the choice that the content is making. I know that sounds abstract, but it's really how I think about it. And anyone who creates anything understands that, I think, that you can go in with a preconceived idea of what it's going to be, but once you start doing it, it tells you what it wants to be, just the way something will tell you how it wants to begin and how it wants to end. So you have to be listening for that, and you have to be risking. You have to believe that somehow there's a logic to it, and that your mind, if you follow your own mind and your heart, that it will find its form. And that took me a while in life. I didn't start out that way, you know. I was trained to be an academic and intellectual, have a PhD in literature. They trained me to write in a very academic way. And then I spent 5 years trying to unlearn that and to write The Invisible Drama, which wanted to be a popular book, or I wanted it to be a popular book, more popular book. And so I had to break with that form and let it be the form it wanted to be. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, I see that when I read The Invisible Drama, okay, no one of your book is still, but we will work on this, is still translated in Italian. I think it's very interesting that Italian audience can access to this. Because when I was reading The Invisible Drama, that is not so recent, but I think after the pandemic became, again, very urgent, radical, because I think we all experience, again, anxiety, you know, thinking of death, of loss. And I noticed that, you know, I felt, okay, maybe we can say it's an essay, maybe we can say this, but I felt that you step out from the role the role of writer. Sometimes you were a poet, you were even a psychotherapist. You know, I read a lot of books on psychotherapy, psychologists, and I felt that you were talking about this topic in a different way. In a way that not as a textbook, so in a way that everybody can understand and can relate. So I see that through the form, you were step out from the role of the writer. So you were a poet, you were a psychotherapist, you were a researcher, and you were also a sort of spiritual guide in some way. So you realize this? There is a way. Okay, probably I think you study a lot. I'm losing you. Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. No, because it freeze for a second. So the image was okay.
Question.
So you think that you realize that this is a step in and out from these different roles?
I guess, truthfully, I don't see them as different roles.
Okay.
The way that that book became, so I made a structural decision very early with that book. And the decision was not to write a first person narrator. So I don't say I in that book, except every now and then I give an example from my own life. But basically, I'm writing more in a philosophical way. And it was very deliberate because a lot of books were coming out, personal memoirs by women about their anxieties or their complexities. I didn't want to write that book. I wanted to write a book which would be useful to other women and would maybe have a more philosophical framework to it. So I created a form for it. The reason it took 5 years is that I had to go through all those emotions myself while writing the book. I had to do the research, but then I had to feel it. And I think maybe what you're talking about is that the book has feeling in it, real emotion in it, because I was feeling real emotion writing it. There were times I cried through whole chapters of that book because I was working through my own anxiety in that book, but not directly. So it doesn't have this first person voice, but actually it's a very personal book.
Yeah, I felt this. I felt that there was an essay, but was also very personal. So a style, I was interested to understand how you were doing it. I don't see your image. I don't know. We don't see
Did I
you.
go away? I'm still
Yeah,
here.
we hear your voice, but we don't see the image. I apologize for
That's
that.
okay. You can concentrate
But
on the words.
okay, we move on. I hope the image come back because, I'm trying to, to in
Talking to
some
me
way,
and
yes,
you.
talking to you and
Yeah.
bring you here as much as possible.
So
So
imagine that we're on radio, then you wouldn't see me. If we were doing radio, you probably wouldn't see me.
yeah,
So just
so
think that way.
you like a radio play? You like?
I like radio interviews very much because you can go deep. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go a little bit deeper. I see that there is there are a lot of feelings. The structure change. Also in the same book, you change structure. But I see that you recalls a little bit the model of the ancient journey of change. In your book, what I see, talking about narrative, that you don't just tell a story, but you say, this is a story, I'm changing it during the process. There is a constant process of change and transformation that for me get back to the reason of literature, why we write, why literature exists.
Me.
Oh, you're back.
Oh, I'm back, but I can't see you now.
Yes.
Oh, now I see you.
Okay.
Can you still see me?
Good. We are
Okay,
here.
good.
This is the
Back.
real timing. Okay. So we say that there are feelings, but I notice, because I don't want the students or people understand that you put there and there is a fire, a talent, and things just happen. I notice that you use a structure that, for example, in the invisible drama is different from Losing Ellen. In invisible drama, there is a model of the ancient journey of change. Because you really take the reader inside a process of transformation and change. Not all books do this. Not all narrative use this. So in the invisible drama, there is for me, I will say the Aristotelic structure of the three acts. I don't know if you agree about that. So we start with a problem. We go through a series of trials. The main character, that can be women, reader, writer, until a sort of recognition and a healing process. So anxiety become in some way become the reason why you write the book, but also in some way the solution and the fuel for the creativity. So let's start maybe because in Losing Ellen, you change the structure. That means the story suggests you a different way to do it.
But that's what I was saying, that form the content determines the form. So in the anxiety book, since people haven't read it, I will tell you the problem that I was interested in very succinctly. The problem was that it was a moment when women were supposed to feel very liberated. And all of a sudden, we were supposed to be out in the workforce. Life was great. We could do everything. We could be sort of Wonder Women.
We are in the 70s, which
80s.
80.
80s.
Okay, so after the movement.
Into the 90s. Okay, so we're in the 80s, and that was this illusion that women were now, could do anything, could be anything, and their lives would be great. But when I looked around me, and myself included, I noticed that women had a lot of anxiety. So I thought, well, that's interesting. I thought that we should be better now. It's not the 50s. Women aren't depressed, as people were writing about in the 50s. They're out in the workforce. They're doing different things. They're going to school. but yet women were anxious. So I became really interested in what is anxiety and why are we experiencing anxiety as an emotion, and what is the good of it and what is the bad of it. So that was the problem that I set out to understand. And I interviewed many people and many therapists, and I did a lot of work and I learned a lot about anxiety. Now, of course, I had my own anxiety, or I would probably never have written the book. So I was trying to figure myself out too. But also, so I had to do all of that work for the reader also. I wanted the reader to understand, as you say, the problem. I wanted the reader to understand what anxiety was. I assumed the readership would be women, which in fact is what happened with the book. And then I wanted to get through that anxiety myself so I could write about it and help women get through it. So that is the journey. But it wasn't a self-help book. It wasn't like, these are the things you need to do to alleviate anxiety. You need to go to the gym, you need to, whatever it was. It was a book, it was a philosophical book that my thinking was, if you could make the cause of the anxiety visible, it would lose its power. So if there is a psychotherapeutic part to it, it's that you disempower anxiety when you make it visible. And that's why it's called the invisible drama, because the problem of anxiety is you can be with a very anxious person and not even know they're anxious, and yet they feel anxious. The person feels anxious. So we can hide it from each other. We can hide it in the culture, but we are feeling it. We are experiencing it. So that's what I was interested in. And it took me 5 years, 1, to figure out what I was saying, 2, to figure out a form, and 3, to get through it myself so I could write about what actually helped. I had to figure that out.
In the end, it seems in the end there is a chapter on the writer women. It seemed to me that the recognition, the healing, in some way, you are saying that the writer, the women as writer, or the women that write, or women that read, women that write, are in some way, I don't want to say the solution, because the solution of anxiety, but they are a little bit your recognition, your reply. And there is a chapter also on the therapist women. So it seems that for the reader, you give this figure of women as a goddess, as guide that tell you, okay, writing in the same way, reading, because I put writing and reading in the same, so we are not talking here only about people that write, but also people that read are the healing process. Isn't this way?
Yes, I mean, that what I guess very important to getting through anxiety is to realize you're not alone. And where the women writers come in is that they are talking about the issues that other women are experiencing. And yet a lot of women feel lonely with that experience. So I was saying women friendships, women writers, women psychotherapists, these are people who can help you get through what is truly a historical problem. Because the problem is that we live in multiple levels of consciousness. So the society tells women, you can do anything you want now, but inside you don't feel that way. So it's that conflict between the inner and the outer that I was trying to explain. Once you make that kind of a contradiction visible, it loses power and women become more empowered. That was my thinking. And where did I go to understand that? I went to other writers, other women artists, other women thinkers to understand, how did they get through this? How did they figure this out? What did they say?
Yeah.
And that's why they're there in the book.
I think, Carol, that the contradiction, because there is a contradiction here. I know friends, people that sometimes say, I don't read about these things, because if I read, I become them. So it seemed to me that in your book, anxiety is the starting problem, but for a creative person, there is a type of anxiety that is the fuel. So this is also for students. Sometimes they ask, to write about something, I have to feel it, or is better also for reader, if I'm anxious and I read about anxious, some people make joke, oh, you're already anxious, why you read about anxiety? That for me is exactly the opposite. If I talk about it, if I express this, at one point, this thing change in front of me. And it's the catharsis process that I don't think everybody believes in this. In fact, it is the reason why a lot of people read things that are completely detached from their life, for entertainment. And I don't want to say that this is not good, but, so what do you think about this contradiction?
Well, I know that the reason anxiety has power is because it's hidden. And I know that when you talk about it, when you begin to address it, it loses power. So that's why it's so important. If you have certain kinds of issues, like a lot of people tell me about my book about my mother,
Yeah.
they say, I don't want to read it because I haven't lost my mother. I can't even begin to feel, I'm so terrified to even think about that. To this I say, the book is about permission to grieve. And so many people have written to me and said, you know what this book did? It let me grieve. And also the book is funny. There's a lot of humor in it because silly, wacky things happened during that period, as often happens during very sad moments. Very funny things occur too. And I tried to weave the book so that it wasn't heavy in that way. But also I was hoping by the end, it ends with grace. It ends with air. I was hoping that people would go through the process and they would be lifted up the way I was at the end, that you would be free of the burden of it. So I think people are afraid of their own feelings, but often books are written to help exactly that, to disempower those things which are fearful. That's what the Greeks knew. I mean, the Greeks understood that tragedy. I mean, what could be more terrifying than Oedipus? A situation like that, crimes that are committed, Medea, horrible things that happen in Greek tragedy. The idea was that there is catharsis, that if you watch something which is so extreme, so much more extreme than most people's lives would ever be, that you have an experience which makes it all less fearful. And I guess I truly have always looked to art and culture and in all forms to help me through life, because life is hard and it begins hard and it ends hard. And in the middle is a chance to script the life we want to live. So I look to writers and intellects to help me understand that. So I guess I know it's when you're young, you get afraid of yourself. It's fear of fear. But I would say if you want to be a writer or if you want to be any kind of creative person, you have to jump into that and you have to feel it, or no one will come with you on that journey in your writing. The reason that people read a book is because it touches them, and the reason it touches them is because the writer is feeling what they're writing.
Yes, allora, in this regard, I want to ask you something about the approach to the writing. Allora, we met exactly through losing Ellen. Your creation, I don't want to see, because for me was fiction, essay, was many things. I couldn't define it, and I found interesting the fact that I couldn't define it. And I didn't read so many Italian literature in this way, so I like it. Because also allow me to play with style and say to my students, you can play with styles. In regard to that book that we met with that book about grief, because I was going through grief, and I have to say, I read it and I say, this story is very different from what happened to me. The roots, me was my father, also the roots, Jewish was not your mother, but there is, different culture, United States, my father is from Naples. So everything was different, but I recognize step by step everything. It seemed that you were telling to me my story. So I found this from a creative point of view very interesting. because it means, it seems that more deeper you go, more honest you are with what you are writing, you touch everybody. So maybe the audience didn't read the book, but this is a stimulus to maybe to read it. And what I want to tell you, that for me, it seemed to me a process of adaptation. So you adapt the real life event to a form of art. So can you say a little, maybe you already say this, but how you did it? And I also noticed, talking about style, that you use a quote from Simone Weil, for example, Grace and Gravity. That's mean Simone Weil as a philosopher, very complex, you were able to create a mingle between all these elements. That's mean very personal, very universal, philosophical, very fiction, invention. So when we adapt real things, what happened? What is the experience? What is the process? How you felt when you did it? And this help you to reply to the question where we go when we disappear? To reply to yourself, what happened when we lose somebody? Where we are going?
Well, I mean, your response, many people said this to me, and it surprised me, because I thought the book was so particular to my life and the conditions of my mother in a retirement home in Florida. I mean, all the things that are so American. And yet, and this is to speak to everyone who has any aspiration to write anything, if it is true that if you go to the deepest feelings, then you hit something which is, one could say, universal or human. We find our humanness in each other when we let ourselves go into those very deep feelings. So losing a parent, one of the saddest, hardest things that we go through in life, that inevitably most people go through. If you really expose your own vulnerability in your writing, other people who are going through those emotions will find themselves in your story, even if your story is so particular to you. This I honestly studied in literature, and when I was getting a degree in literature, people talked about this, but I never thought about it when I was writing. And it shocked me when the book first came out and people would write to me, this is just like my story, but of course it wasn't. And I was thrilled. I felt like this is wonderful, that people could find themselves in something that I thought was so personal. In fact, I thought it was so personal that I didn't even think I should ever publish it, because I thought, who will care about this story? It's so much just about me. And I had always written more philosophical books before.
Yeah, this
So
was almost autobiographical, right? Was a
Totally.
Ecco, but
And I
Carol
created a
doesn't
very
feel a memoir. It's not a memoir. I can't say it's a memoir.
Well,
So,
I called it an essay. I
okay.
called it says Losing Helen an essay, because I couldn't call it a memoir either. Although if you have to put things in genres, because it's first person, you would say it's a memoir. But I think everything transcends category. If it's worth anything, it should break with form. Everything should break with form and make new form. That's what we should be doing, not just replicating every form that's already been created. That's what art schools should be. That's what universities should be. But we're all so committed to the past that it's difficult for people to feel the permission to try something new. And that brings us back to Black Mountain College, where they were exploding all assumptions about what teaching art should be, what making art should be. And that's why so many artists became famous, because they came out of there really with experiments. Like they said, we're not making art, we're making experiments.
Ecco,
That's a really different idea, yeah.
As a teacher, for example, you're also not only a teacher, but as a teacher, somebody that has the mission also to teach to somebody else. Today, that, the timing of the Black Mountain College now is kind of different. I can speak both of Italy and United States in some way, more about Italy. So what type of tips, of advice about this, because that when you attend a university, there are also a lot of rules, credits, expectation, and, very important question. If you want to live with this, if you want to live with your writing, we know that, you have also to make sometimes choices that are not always artistic. So what type of tips or advice you give to a young or less young, between 20, 30, I don't know, also 40, people that want to become a writer, that maybe attend school, how they can manage this again, a contradiction, make a living with this, but also take the courage to explore your voice. Your voice, that's mean make mistake, have the time, is very, we know that is complex, this, because there is expectation.
Well, there's so much to say about all that, but I guess I think that, everyone needs a foundation. So universities, colleges, they provide that. They give you a depth of knowledge that it is then your job when you leave to figure out how to use in the world effectively, So, and I also think that we all shape our lives. We try to give form to our lives. It doesn't always work the way we thought it was going to work. Sometimes it works better, sometimes it doesn't work as well. But we should have in our mind a concept of living like an artist, even if we're not an artist. Because what that means is that you're living the life
what
you
does
want
it mean?
to.
What does it mean to
Yeah.
live as an artist?
It means to always be open to possibility and to always assume that you can learn new things and to always know that you can break with the forms that you've inherited. Permission to do that. Living as an artist financially, living as a writer, living is hard. It's really hard. I mean, I've always taught. I've always been a dean for many years, run art schools. Because if you want to do the work you want to do, the world may or may not reward that. But that's not what's so important. What's important is that you find that voice that you want to use in life and you let it grow and evolve and you give yourself what you need to experience as much as you can to feed that creative part of you, whatever you're going to do in life. You have to take care of that creativity. Children have it. We know they have it. And then we lose it because it gets kind of constricted in us. And then we have to find it again, But if that's a goal, if to stay as a creative person becomes a goal, you follow your heart and you will find it again. And then you have to take risk once you find it. So it's not a simple path, but it's a great one. If you can get on that path, it's a great one.
Yeah, I agree about that. Also because it's not, I think strongly creativity affect not only your work, but your life. And some people understand this, others no. For me, as one of my missions also with students that maybe come from different paths, is to make them understand that it's not only about what they are doing that moment, but how they live their entire life, how they fall in love, how they embrace, relationship with family. This is, this can become very abstract, but in reality is very concrete. Because I believe in talent, but I also believe that people can learn. I have still this last question, then we open to the audience. Do you believe that it's a talent, talking about writing, it's a talent and you have the talent and the talent help you in any case, or you believe also that can be learned, that maybe you have some talent, but not so much, but you have persistence and you can learn because you have something to say?
I would say it's neither talent or learning. It's a passion.
Okay.
Like if it's something you really want to do, it doesn't matter if people tell you you're talented. Some of the great artists of history, people thought had no talent, and we know that. And they suffered terribly because the work they were making, no one understood. So I'm not big on the idea of talent. I mean, I think
Me too.
I would use the word urgency. Like if you need to write, if you need whatever it is you need to do, whatever it is you feel passionate, strongly about in life, that will propel you forward. The trick is to feed that need and to give it what it's asking you to do. So your path could be very different. Your path could be sports. Your path could be any, it could be anything. It's just that you're going to succeed at it if the drive is powerful. And if you don't have that part of you that you need to do it, you probably actually won't do it, even if you have talent. And I've been with people that have much better writers than I am, but they didn't need to do it. It wasn't important to their life that they do it. I've never was a good writer. I had terrible time writing in graduate school. I was a disaster because I had
I can't believe
too
this.
many, no, I had too many ideas and I didn't know how to manifest them because I hadn't grown into the ideas and I hadn't grown into form yet. It took me a long time and still, I struggle. I do many, many drafts. I think that I need to do it. And if I don't do it, I get unhappy, truthfully. So I will always write because it propels my life forward. That's what I mean. I think the urgency, the need to do it is as important as anything called talent. And there's so many things you can learn, but without that passion for it, what's the point?
Yeah, I believe also for students in general or professional, sometimes you get stuck
That is right.
in the in the idea, I'm a playwright. I'm just a playwright. I'm a poet. I can't shift. Instead, I think it's important to understand that writing is so extended. You can apply, and this is also the reason for this conversation, to different fields, to different situations that can fuel your creativity and also can help you to make a living. Because if you can write for different medium, you can maybe, but sometimes, and I say this, from university, I mean, it's my experience, you get this idea of you are studied this, you have to do this. And you know that sometimes the university, they they bind you. There's a sort of a trap on this. It seems that you can change form because, in particular, if you already wrote something, so there is an idea that you are that.
I think that someday in the future, all these categories will disappear. But universities have perpetuated these silos or categories of knowledge, when in fact, in the world now, young people are moving between them so fluidly. I have so much confidence in that. They have permission to do that. They're working in so many different forms. Our students are writing in all forms. The filmmakers are making television. The playwrights are making films. I mean, everybody's doing everything. And I wish so much that the structures of the university were more fluid and could respond to what's already happening, actually. But they're very glacial. They move slowly for change.
Yeah, so you have to remain at Columbia if you want that. You can't leave.
Well, no, Columbia has the same structures. It's just that in an art school, we try to give permission. But really, there's a lot of resistance. There's still categories. We still teach poetry, fiction.
I know, yes.
The categories are all there, and I'm always trying to blow them up, but I haven't succeeded. So but I think that the next generations will push against those categories, and eventually those walls will come down.
Okay, thank you so much. Allora, I would suggest to open to the audience for some questions. I hope the translation was good. I hope you were able to follow everything. So please, if you have some question for Carol, we are here to reply to everything, or everything in your mind. Don't limit yourself about the type of question you want to ask. This is an audience shy. Yeah. We have the first question. Don't see very well. I think they give you the microphone. Yeah.
Hello, Carol. I had a question for you, and it was about whenever you come to writing, right? There are always those points where you feel blocked or something like that. And I wanted to ask you, how do you overcome those problems? Like, how do you overcome yourself from blocking during your creation, your content creation, during your writing in general?
Okay, I have it.
Good.
Can you hear me now? Okay. You know, I often don't try to write until I feel ready to write. I think sometimes when people say they're blocked, what they really mean is they're actually not ready to write yet. So sometimes I read, and I try to sort of fill myself up, sort of like an empty pitcher. I try to fill myself up to the point where I'm overflowing, and then right. I'm getting, yeah.
Oh.
Can you hear me? Because I'm
Yes.
hearing some. Okay.
We lost you for a second. You received the translation?
I don't use the translation. I can hear you.
Okay, you have the in English, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, we lost the last 10 seconds of your
Okay.
response.
They lost the last 10 seconds. Can you repeat the last part? About the image you hear, right? What you say about the image? That, you know, you make yourself kind of empty, right?
Yeah, we got till that one.
Well, should I? Oh.
Yeah, he lost the last 10 seconds of the reply.
So let me say again. So all I was saying is that I think sometimes people think they're blocked when in fact they're just not ready to actually write. And sometimes I have to read a lot or do whatever it is that fills me up with ideas. And then at that point, I just want to write. I also think that when you can't write, you just get up and go for a walk, do something else. But I think what happens is people get fearful when that happens. They think they won't be able to write. So I think that's a lot of it, is just fear. Fear also people have of not writing well enough. I do so many drafts. I know that the beginning is going to be very awkward, that whatever I put down is going to be awkward, but I just put it down anyway. But everyone is different, and it's figuring out what helps you. What makes you want to write? What makes you feel permission to write? Everyone's so different. I have friends who don't do any drafts. They just sit down, they do it all in their head, and then they write. I need to do it. Writing is how I know what I think. So I let myself just write. When I'm ready, though, and I don't make myself do it when I don't feel ready to write. So it's being kind to yourself is big thing here. How to be kind to yourself.
And also allow mistakes also. You know, bad writing. I say that sometimes the bad writing, if it's every day, can be bad writing. You know, nobody's there to tell you when you are doing that is a bad writing, right?
Yeah.
Are you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree with that.
But, you know, sometimes we have the internal judgment that say, oh, this is no. But this is not real, because maybe for other people, beside family that will always maybe put you down or support you, you know, maybe there is something interesting, I think.
Yeah, after all, it's all about, the correct way for improvement is mistake itself. So, yeah, I do agree with that. It's the correct way to do things in general.
Yeah, in that case, for my experience also with students, I see, and I have a recently example that a little bit was sad for me, that, you know, you face also your own ego. You know, I talk your own ego. That means that sometimes you overjudge is a sort that you want to see yourself perfect. This is ego. I think ego, I don't know if you agree, or Carol, but it's the worst thing when you are doing a creative work, because block you continuously. The ego part.
Yeah, I'm getting feedback, so I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
I honestly go back to fear,
Okay. I call
whether it's
ego, but you call fear, yes.
or whatever it is that makes people afraid that it's not good enough. But I think this is where it comes in, learning how to make something good enough. Like I learned a lot from working with editors. I learned a lot about how to organize text. Can you hear two voices? I hear two voices.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I also, can you hear her?
Yeah,
Okay.
sì, posso
No,
sentire.
sometimes I lose some piece. I don't know why. But.
But I think I learned a lot about writing from working with editors because they help you understand how to make something. It took me a long time to have permission to throw out pages of text and to cut it, and to make it work. And I also read everything out loud, everything. I listen to it.
Yes.
It helps me with my own voice and it keeps me moving. If I read everything I've written out loud.
The reading aloud, I agree. I think it's a change. It's a game changer if you do it, because it takes some strength. After you read aloud, it's really, it's as you run. You have to listen your voice. But it's also fun. You are performing your writing in some way. Okay.
And if you really want to hear what you've done, read it to another person.
Oh.
Because you'll hear all the mistakes. You'll hear it. You'll say, oh, I see, this went on too long. Oh, I see, I jumped so quickly to that. I lost my audience. Oh, I see, this is really awkward. The minute you have even one person, it's so interesting that you can do it internally, but the minute you make an audience yourself and read it to that audience, you hear everything wrong with it. And then you go back and you rework it. You just have to know you're going to keep reworking, and not be afraid of that process, I think.
Okay, we lost the image again, but you hear
Okay.
us. It's okay. Another question? We are arriving for the second question. And Carol, how you choose the person that read you? Sorry, 1 second. You choose specifically the person that is going to listen your writing, or it's casual?
I would only ever read something to someone who wouldn't make me feel bad.
Okay. So you choose, this is the criteria, you choose with this criteria.
I wouldn't read something that's not finished or that I know is a draft to anyone who I think would make me self-conscious. I would like their feedback, but I don't want to be made nervous, because then I won't feel free to write it anymore. Okay. So I either don't read to anyone and I just read to myself, or I read to someone who I know is going to be kind and say, well, that's wonderful, but I didn't understand X, Y, or Z,
Okay,
and then you
kindness. We come back to kindness here.
And analytic at the same time, yes.
Okay,
sorry, a good reader.
I blocked
listener.
The question, so I interrupt the question coming.
Sì, buonasera, io faccio la domanda in italiano, ero impaziente di sfoderare il mio meraviglioso inglese, ma mi hanno chiesto di farla in italiano. Quindi...
Sì, perché traducono in simultanea. Quindi.
Benissimo.
Okay.
Allora, intanto grazie Carol per il talk, è stato molto interessante ascoltarti. E io sono incuriosito dall'ultimissima cosa che hai detto rispetto alla sparizione delle forme letterarie e delle strutture, nel senso che, da quanto ho capito, è qualcosa che sta già accadendo, ecco, questo mi sembra sotto gli occhi di tutti, però tu dicevi in futuro, prossimamente, spariranno del tutto. E mi domando in che modo secondo te questo può accadere, nel senso che alla fine la scrittura esiste dentro forme, quindi per quanto queste forme si mescolino e cambino, ci saranno nuove forme. Tu pensi che il discorso sia non pensare alle forme, o il fatto che le forme possano non esistere, e se sì, come? Grazie.
That's a good question.
Yeah, very.
What I was really saying is that form evolves. And it doesn't mean that won't always be plays that are structured a certain way, or that we won't tell stories a certain way, or that poems won't exist as recognizable as poems. But I think that we're moving towards more fluidity between those. So you can mix form, you can invent form. That, I think the traditional forms will always be here. We love them. We love going to theater and having, the build up. We love the Greek structure. We're always
Aristoteles, we love him.
tell stories that way. We love those things. But I see it like, for example, my whole school, it seems to me, everyone who writes, so it's not the visual art people, but everyone else, filmmakers, playwrights, and writers working in all form, are writing for television series, for example, which is like, that's even better than a film. If you have a voice, you could tell a story over 2 years, and people would tune into these episodes. What never occurred to me that would become such a dominant form that people are watching and people are writing for. But yet for writers, not only is it fun to imagine something even bigger than War and Peace, bigger than Tolstoy could imagine, but that it could go on for a very, very long time. People are beginning to imagine that that's possible, and that people who are playwrights want to work in that form, but they still want to write plays. And people who are poets want to write series, but they still want to write poetry. They can do these things simultaneously. So I'm not saying forms should go away. I'm just saying that we should accept that they evolve, and that you can be working in multiple forms simultaneously, and that a lot of people are doing that now. That's really what I meant. But that the institutions we're in, to Argia's point, they make you choose sometimes. I am X, I'm do this, this is how I work. And that makes it difficult to break out of that form and try something else, or to push that form. The reason that, for example, in film, you have film looking for playwrights, because filmmakers understand that playwrights really know how to tell stories. And they're going to probably be better at the language part of that than people who go to film school. So people are looking for people who have a different kind of training to work in a different form than they were trained to work in. That's what I mean, that you just want that kind of fluidity. It also, like, for example, television series, being in a writer's room of a television series is how young people are making money. Because all of a sudden you can actually make money as a writer, which was very difficult to do. So all I'm advocating is that we let forms evolve, that we're not purists, but that we love the forms we love. We will always love the form of the novel. There will always be people writing novels, I think, but maybe they'll also be writing poetic novels, or maybe they'll also already are writing the essay novel. So that's it. That's what I really meant, but it's a great question.
Grazie.
Thank you. Some other question? 2. Ciao.
Buonasera, Miss Becker. La mia domanda è un po' più personale, ma si collega alla parte del discorso quando lei ha detto che una storia, per quanto possa sembrare particolare, per altre persone invece è più comune. Quando io ho realizzato che ciò che scrivevo permetteva ad altre persone di sentirsi comprese e capite, è stato molto bello, però ho pensato anche che questa sensazione potrebbe mettere da parte il mio naturale bisogno e desiderio di scrivere in favore dello scrivere per aiutare le persone. Come suggeriresti di affrontare questo tipo di situazione?
Am I understanding that the problem is that you begin to think that that you were writing for yourself, but when you realize other people could take that writing, then it was no longer for you, but you were writing for them? Is that the question?
Sì.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a great question too. What I would say to that is it doesn't matter. because once you write it for yourself, you've given yourself the gift of having written it. And you're letting yourself, you've had the experience, you've gone through the experience, the process of writing it. If it has helped you, if it has healed something in you, if it has externalized something that was internal, you've already done that. But you should stick with you shouldn't anticipate your audience. So that's where the question becomes complicated. Once you start anticipating your audience, then I think that will change what you write. I think you should write it as you want to write it and hope that if you feel it deeply enough, other people will respond to it. And that's great. That's a plus. It doesn't take anything away from your own transformation in writing it. And it doesn't take anything away from letting other people share that experience with you. I think all of that is possible, but you should not anticipate your audience's response. Because if you start doing that, then you're going to dilute what you wanted to write, and it probably won't be as good anymore. You know, so it's a funny thing. You have to still write it as if you're only writing it for you.
But
when I wrote the anxiety book, I'll just tell you this very quick story. I had never written a book before. It was so the books I went to a book signing, and they piled up big stack of books for me to sign the books. And this child said to me, a little girl came up to me and she said, "Did you write all those books?" And I thought, that's so interesting, because when you're writing a book, there's only one book. And then all of a sudden it goes out in the world and there are many books. And then I remember seeing someone reading that book on the subway in Chicago, thinking, oh my God, that's my book. Should I tell her I wrote that book? You know, because you're writing it for yourself and you have one manuscript and then it gets reproduced. So books are wonderful because they go out into the world. You never know where they are. You know, they can end up in remaindered, supermarkets, or they can end up in libraries, or you never know where they are, but that someone's reading them somewhere and you'll never know who, where. And that's thrilling.
And Carol, they
Yeah.
create a community. You talk in the book about the invisible drama. These writer-reader create a community that is in the middle. At one point, it's not in the writer, it's not in the reader, it's in the middle, a sort of community, right?
It can be. With that book, I did a lot of touring and speaking and television and things, and I got to hear from I got to meet people who were reading the book and what they were saying about the book. So it's a very interesting process, that whole process of whose book is it. But once you've written it, you let go of it and you're on to the next thing. Like you go through, it's not your book anymore anyway. Everyone's going to mark it up and write in it and have their favorite passage, and you're not even important anymore, truly. And that's a great thing. And you're on to the next thing, hopefully. You let it go into the world.
Was the reply, you received the reply?
Sì,
Okay,
sì, grazie.
good. We have some other, I think there was in front.
Grazie. Buonasera Carol. Io volevo parlare invece sono molto convinta che il contenuto e la passione siano molto importanti, sono due cose che lei ha messo in evidenza. Io ho iniziato a 12 anni a scrivere poesie perché secondo me l'adolescenza è il periodo della poesia. Poi sono passata a scrivere qualche romanzetto giallo, qualche novella. Poi nel periodo in cui ero innamorata scrivevo di nuovo poesie, perché l'innamoramento secondo me è di nuovo tornare adolescenti, e quindi anche a 50 anni ho ripreso a scrivere poesie. Poi ho cominciato a scrivere dei racconti sempre più brevi, alcuni li chiamo alla giapponese con un alter ego che si chiama Kiko, e finiscono col finire della pagina, cioè appena la pagina finisce io termino il racconto. Man mano che vado avanti con gli anni, io ne ho più di 70, comincio a usare sempre meno parole nella scrittura e mi sono ridotta a scrivere haiku. E questo non lo considero però una deprivazione, perché l'haiku è una forma è visivo, cioè c'è l'immagine, c'è la musica, c'è la parola. È un percorso un po' strano. Volevo sapere cosa lei ne pensava di questo perdere la parola ma renderla più intensa, forse.
I think if you follow your own spirit, then maybe haiku is a real purity of your own spirit, getting really sharp and really lucid and really clear. So I think that's great. In any case, I always think the form chooses you, so you don't get to choose the form. So if haiku has chosen you, it's beautiful.
Very nice. Do we have some more questions, or?
Maybe time.
Yeah, I want to see, because I have one more, the last one.
Okay, it's not the last word.
Yeah, tomorrow I will speak about The Last of Us. Today is the last question. There is another question? There is one more? Okay, no, there is one from the audience. Then I close with mine.
Salve. Io ho una domanda che forse non c'entra moltissimo, nel senso che vorrei ricollegarmi a quello che è un po' il mio mondo, dico a livello artistico, creativo, cioè i videogiochi. Avrei una domanda, nel senso se Carol ha mai pensato di trasportare le sue opere all'interno di un mondo virtuale, permettendo a questi di avere anche un aspetto e magari portare il suo immaginario ad avere diciamo, un aspetto digitale e visivo.
Videogiochi hai detto?
Videogiochi.
Videogiochi, ok, video games. This is interesting.
I am the worst person on this because I never play video games, but
Can you sue losing Ellen in video games?
No, I would never say never about anything. I had my first experience in the metaverse at the World Economic Forum this year. I would never say never, but I am really a Luddite in terms of, I'm really primitive technologically, and I'm probably the last person to prefer reading to any other form, or one of the last people. So it's unlikely, but as I said, I would never say never. Who knows what comes next? Or I've always wished I could make a film. I think that would be an amazing form, but to do something like that, I would need a great collaborator. I have in my mind a film based on a William Blake poem that would have to be almost animation, actually, to represent his own drawings in some way, his own amazing illustrations of his own work in some way. So these things occur to me, but the right person would have to appear to be my collaborator, because it would never be something I would do on my own. But that would be fun too. So Argia, last question.
Yeah, okay, this is, I hope, maybe this is a question that open the next. Okay, I realize teaching a writer that is Elena Ferrante. You know, I don't want to talk about if you like or not Elena Ferrante, but what happened during these courses recently is that students really, you know, we are doing a creative writing course about literature. So our people then sometimes write or they want to learn about the language, about the culture. Recently is happening that I don't know how to explain this, they forgot completely, and not always in a positive way, they completely forgot that this is a novel. They become what they are reading, and what happened, that, you know, the conflict, the character of this, in this case, two main character, they transport from the art form, from the creativity to the real life. At the point that I already have, I don't know if it's how I teach this, so I'm putting myself in discussion, but this happened with this writer. Sometimes they don't want to read this anymore. They don't want to do this anymore, because this story, this archetype attach them so deeply that they can't manage. They can manage. There are conflicts between women during the class. And it's very subtle, but this happened. So I don't know what you think about, you know, it's supposed that the readers, that we become the story that we write, we get inspiration at the point that we, not only inspiration, because in inspiration there is a distance. Here, there is no distance anymore. You know, you completely become the character that you are reading.
I have no idea what to say to this.
I know, but I don't. I say I want to share with her because I don't know. I want to share this with somebody that maybe can.
Maybe you need to emphasize more the structure,
Okay.
because art is a creation. You know, it's a series of decisions that a writer makes or any kind of artist makes. Maybe what's happened is that, and maybe this is true of the world we're in right now, is that these lines between reality and unreality or truth,
Yes.
fiction, are blurring. And I watched the little commercial that began before the Adrian Brody talking to young men, which I thought was pretty amazing. And we're seeing it in the United States very much, this conflation of, you know, fact and fiction, and people not even caring that, in fact, they're acting out or living a lie, that we've really lost touch, and media is not helping this. So people are very seduced by forms which can lead them into pretty dark spaces that have very little to do with reality. So I think when one teaches literature, maybe it's important, given that there is this tendency to fuse fact and fiction, to spend some time really showing how the books are constructed.
Yeah, because the structure is still there. These are inspired from real people, maybe, we don't know, but they are character, and these allow to create the distance. Is still literature, I think. But sometimes this difference is not always clear. I experienced that.
It's also true if you watch something that has a very strong ambience, that has a very strong visual, or it has a great score, you get lost in it. And if you stay lost in it, that's a problem. If you get lost in it and you have a wonderful experience, that's wonderful. But if you forget that what you got lost in is a creation, then that's a problem. And I think we're living in a societal problem right now, where people are getting confused between what is actually exists and what is the fabrication designed to suit someone's need for power. So I think maybe art is more important than ever, but maybe understanding how things are structured to serve certain ends is even more important than ever too.
Yeah, as a responsibility, I think as teacher, you have this responsibility. You know, I felt, you know, if I did this turmoil, I say, you know, that you lose the point, that it's learning something, have fun, you know. So it was a concern I would like to share with you. Thank you.
So Argia, thank you so much, and I wish I were there. It's like a wonderful
me too,
place.
because I will bring you. Yeah, I will bring you to a nice dinner now. So, but so. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much.
So happy for that. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.